We didn't start out as a powerhouse. We had to gradually get there. And she was one of them that laid the foundation for us to be what we have, what we are now in terms of the prestige. Back then, Jamaica didn't have its own media coverage of the Olympics. So we had to latch on to the feed we're getting from USA and Great Britain. And the way they talked about Jamaica, it was a little patronizing, and they treated us like a little banana republic that we're just trying our thing. And we don't, when I thought of Jamaica, the country Jamaica, and I thought of Jamaica as a woman, I always pictured it as Merlin Atty. I don't know why. But when I think of Jamaica, I think of Merlin Atty. And she was one of them that people were iffy about going to Beijing because they didn't know a lot about her. But from there, she used it as a platform to, and what I like about her is her consistent. From Beijing, people a lot of people were saying, okay, she got the silver, is this a flu?
Today on Discover Jamaica podcast, we're counting down the top 10 fastest female Jamaican sprinters of all time. We're ranking them. We're looking at the 100 and 200 meter to be exact. All right. Now, to help me out, I have my good brethren and sports journalist, Rashid Parchment. Now, let me just give you a quick rundown. Rashid has worked with two of Jamaica's major newspapers, both the Observer and the Gleaner, for countless years. He has done sports journalism for over 10 years now, you know what I mean, just having a wealth of knowledge. And so he's going to be sharing with us, you know, just the various things that we need to take into consideration. Rashid, go on.
But yeah, glad to be here with you. Glad to be on this platform.
Yes, man. All right. So here what? Let's get straight into it. All right. So we have some conversation. We have to look at some factors first before we go into it. So Rashid, can you just tell us about the factors that we're going to take into consideration?
All right. So the criteria, of course, you have when you're talking about greatness, you have to talk about achievement. So when in track and field, you have to talk about medals and who won the most medals, and not just the most medals, because the medals have worth to them. So some medals are worth more than others depending on the level of event you competed at and where you won them. You have to look at the Olympic Games, which is the pinnacle of every track athlete's career. Every athlete wants to get to the Olympics and how you perform at the Olympics. So you can't say you're a top athlete and then you won a bag of gold medals at the junior level or the Pan Am level and then you never made it to the Olympics. And then you said that you're 10 medals won there worth more than maybe 2 medals won by another athlete at the Olympics. So it don't work like that. So we weigh it based on the events you competed at the highest level. That also includes the World Athletics Championships. And we also have to take into consideration your consistency at these events. So how often you go to these events and how when you perform at them, because you can go to a lot of World Championships, you know, and you make a lot of finals and you don't medal. But these things are intangible variables. So we have to consider the context in which you perform and what were some of the situations behind it, because some athletes would have had more of a struggle based on where track and field was in Jamaica at the time, as compared to, say, the golden generation of, you know, the bigger names, the more popular household names. So we have to put context to it so everybody has a level playing field that we can measure them by. And we mentioned the consistency, and that also takes into account sustained excellence. And that means your longevity in the sport, maintaining a high level of performance over a significant period. And then some athletes would have competed against each other. So if we're going to be ranking them, we have to see how they do it head to head. So when they face each other on the track, who won more of the races there? And who won more of those races in bigger events? Because
to be fair, to competition means a lot, because here what? Some people, when the competition is not there, they don't show up, right? And then when the competition is there, they might, you know what I mean, they might show up. So that says a lot about the it's hard.
And conversely, some of them perform at the lesser meets and then choke as you would at the bigger event.
True.
We definitely gonna get into that.
So let me round it out then. All right. So let me just go over 5 and 6. So we talk about personal best times, which is very important in terms of, you know, what some runners do in terms of numbers. Because if you're doing track, you have to look at numbers. Good. Yeah. And then the final thing that we want to talk about is their influence. Now, influence, this one's a little bit tricky to measure, but because it's a bit intangible. But we want to look at, you know, how did they influence other people? I can say this off the bat. Is this clear if I say that Merlin Atty may be the most influential Jamaicans,
Right.
two Jamaican sprinters of all time.
Yeah. Because for me, she influenced greatly one of the other key athletes on this list. And we're gonna definitely get into that. But influence for me doesn't just mean how you as an athlete inspired other athletes to come into the sport. For me, and I'm not just talking about track and field, if you're talking about the greatest of all time in any sport, I want to see your influence outside of that sport, how you transcend that sport, and how you use your celebrity status to make society a better place for everyone involved. So that involves your social impact as well.
All right, cool. So here it is, people. We are going straight into it now. So, Rashid, we have the first person who we are
Yeah.
going to put on this list, and her name is. Listen, I'm not going to take any more time. Michelle Freeman.
Yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit about Michelle Freeman and why she was selected number 10 on this list.
All right, so a lot of the younger viewers may not know this name, or they may hear this name and never seen her perform. Michelle Freeman was at her height in the 90s, in the 90s, mid 90s, and I can remember her from the 96 Olympic Games in Atlanta, where she was part of Jamaica's relay team, the 4x1 relay team that won bronze. And some of the younger viewers here might say, bronze? How should I apply for bronze? But you have to put context to it because back in the 90s, when Jamaica went off to these meets, especially the Olympics, if you come back with 1, 2, or 3 medals, that's a big deal.
True.
We weren't as spoiled as we were now. So when you can come back with a medal, that's something. And track and field was our popular sport then, but it wasn't as resourced as it is now. So there wasn't as much money to spend in it. The track clubs in it at the time weren't as established as now. So they're working on a less resources and I would say as well less government support. And a lot of the athletes didn't have the same equipment to train as they do now. So the privileges that exist now weren't available then. So to come back with a medal at the time meant something big. And she was part of a 4x1 relay team that came up with a bronze from the Olympics. That wasn't something that was very commonplace at the time. And as a female athlete, that meant something as well. Then a year later, she followed that up at the World Championship with a bronze medal in the 100-meter hurdle. And for a very long time, Jamaica had good hurdlers, female sprint hurdlers that were making finals. And for them to make a finals, that in itself was a huge deal. So for her to come back with a medal, that was something special at that time. And she's
Okay.
been a part of multiple national championships. And why I would put her in this list is because, as I said, her Olympic medal meant something at the time. And at that time, even if she wasn't coming back with a gold medal, she was always in the mix for the finals at the major event. And you have to also consider who she was competing against at the time. Some of the sprinters from back then would have been considered the USA's greatest sprinters of all time. You think about Gwen Torrance, you think about Gail Devers, you think about Jackie Joyner Kersey. Some of them who are considered America's GOATs. She had to compete against them. And she was competing against some of the others on this list, that we'll mention a little later. You mentioned Merlin Ake at the time. She was Jamaica's premier female sprinter then. Everybody wanted to be like Merlin Ake. She was our poster girl for sprinting. And right behind her, you had Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, who was another icon from that era. So she was making her name against some of the most powerful names in track and field history at that time.
Yes, true. Very, very, very renowned sprinter. All right, we're going to go to now number 9. So number 9 on our list is Grace Jackson.
Yes.
Right? Now, Grace Jackson also has her she has a track meet, right?
Yes.
That's kept on a yearly basis as well in Jamaica, right?
Every February, yeah. And
Yes.
it's in partnership with Queen's High School because that's her old school. That's where she went to high school.
There you go. So
the Queen's Grace Jackson meet, yeah.
yes.
And Grace Jackson competed in the 80s. And everything I said about Michelle Freeman in the 90s applies to Grace Jackson even more in the 80s when track and sport as a whole in Jamaica struggled financially. It struggled to get the corporate support it has now. It's definitely struggled to get the media attention it has now because back then a lot of Jamaica was still being established in terms of media, in terms of the government systems, infrastructure. We didn't have it as abundantly as we have now. And for Grace Jackson to be doing what she did then was tremendous. She is an Olympian in her own right. She's a silver medalist at the Olympics. And back in that era, it was Jamaica was sending less than even 10 athletes to the Olympics. And we're
Okay.
talking these days you're sending a whole team of maybe 40 sprinters. So consider
With
the
them,
entire Olympic team back out 10 as opposed to now we have 40 sprinters. And she was coming back with medals because back then it was just you think of her, you think of Merlin Atu, who was just a youngster just coming out of high school to make her name at the senior level for Jamaica. You think of Dan Quarry, who ran a decade before and medal at the 76 Olympics, I think it was. I have Bert Cameron. So it was the early days of Jamaican sprinting. I mean, not we're not talking about the black and white days, but the early days of the modern era of Jamaican sprinting. And she was one of what you call it now, if you talk about forefathers, so she will be the four mothers, one of the four mothers of that time.
yeah,
And
because
she has
she
a lot of influence because
she definitely.
when Merlin Atu was coming up, Grace
Mhm.
Jackson would have been one of the people that influenced her. So for Merlin Ati to do what she did and learn from her in the camp, she was a senior athlete was providing that expertise to the younger athletes who would have pioneered sprinting in the 90s and further on. So as I said, she was at Seoul Olympics in 1988 and came up with a 200 meter silver medal. And she was a record at the time. She was a record holder in the 200 meters there, the national record holder. And she was consistently heading to the Olympics for Jamaica at the time. And I mentioned Juliet Cuthbert Flint too. Should have been another athlete that learned from her, being at consistent Olympics and World Championships with her.
So and I must mention this and give Grace her flowers because she
Yeah,
would have ushered in prior to Merlin Otis, she would have ushered in that new phase of female athletes and female. Now you're seeing that our female athletes are actually dominating the sprinting
yeah,
game.
yeah. So there's a saying that to run you have to first walk, and that saying comes into play when you talk about Jamaica's sprinting history. We didn't start out as a powerhouse. We had to gradually get there. And she was one of them that laid the foundation for us to be what we are now in terms of the prestige and the reputation we have in sprinting, especially women's sprinting.
All right. So let us now move on to number 8. So
Yeah,
number 8 on our list is Gillette
Cuthbert
Cuthbert
Flint.
Flynn, right?
Yeah,
Now, Gillette is definitely a star, especially in that 92 Olympics. I mean, I definitely saw her come to life, in that one. But
yeah.
give us some more context on her.
All right, so she would have been one of the first athletes I watched growing up because my first Olympics I can remember was the 92 games in Barcelona, Spain. And Merlin Otti and Juliet Cuthbert to me were Jamaica's two main female sprinters. And on the men's side, I think of Raymond Stewart as well. And beyond that, that was it. The main sprinters for Jamaica. And what I liked about Juliet Cuthbert was her heart. She had a big heart. And while Merlin Otti was there, and I didn't necessarily think that Juliet would necessarily get a gold medal. You knew that she was gonna put out everything to get a medal. And she came back from the Olympics with medals. She won a silver medal in the 100 meter and the 200 meter. So she was a double silver medalist. But what I liked about her was her character. When back then Jamaica didn't have its own media coverage of the Olympics, so we had to latch on to the feed we were getting from USA and Great Britain. And the way they talked about Jamaica, it was a little patronizing, and they treated us like a little banana republic that we're just trying our thing and we're not really serious about track and field. But I like how Juliet Cuthbert stood up for herself and stood up for other athletes and tried to make them take us seriously. And she was a no nonsense athlete when she was on the track, and also off it when you heard her speaking about her love for the sport and about other people taking Jamaican athletes very seriously about what we do. So for me that
Richard,
matters. And as I said earlier, how you use your influence to transcend the sport and be a social personality, a social character standing up for against social issues. I thought that is one of the reasons I really like her. And she's used her influence in track and field to do something outside of track and field. These days, she's a noted politician, and she's trying to use her influence to make a mark on Jamaican society. And I respect that. And I wish many other athletes, even athletes competing today, would use their influence to do something for the greater impact of society. But
uh,
we have to get into her key achievements. As I mentioned before, double silver medalist from the 100 meters and 200 meters at the 92 games in Barcelona. And she was also a part of that relay team with Michelle Freeman in the 4x1 in the 96 game at Atlanta, Georgia. And she also took relay gold in the 91 World Championship and in the 4x100 meter relays. Um, and for me, she is one of the icons of track and field. And she's one of them that, if you ask many other athletes competing today, like Australian Fraser Price, Veronica Campbell Brown, who influenced you, they will call her name.
All right. Now we are going to number 7, and I'm going to allow you to introduce this person now.
Yeah, so we're now into what I consider the golden era of Jamaica sprinting. One of the first names from that golden era is Sharon Simpson. And I can remember, funnily enough, when she was when Jamaica was introduced to her was at the trials for the Beijing Games in 2008. And she ran through in the trials of the 100-meter final and placed with Heron Stewart and Shelly and Fraser Price to make that team for the Beijing Games. And no one knew who she was. Everybody was like, Sharon Simpson, who that? And interestingly enough,
she's also very quiet. She's not really all that necessarily outspoken. I think she makes one of those athletes who she make her work on the field do the talking for her. So you really don't get necessarily know, even though like her personality, like people don't necessarily know much about her personal life. But go ahead.
Yeah. So when she finished, I think it was third at trials, she beat out Veronica Campbell Brown. And Veronica Campbell Brown at that time was the top sprinter in Jamaican track and field, because she came back from Athens Olympics with a 200-meter goal, I think it was. And everyone was saying, even though Sharon made it through, we have to take her out of the team and put in Veronica because we don't know who this girl is. And I thought that was harsh, because this girl, the point of trials is called trials, to prove yourself and make the team. And she did that. And everyone saying, no, we need to establish star it. But she went to the Beijing Games and she came up with a silver medal. And that is where everybody say, you know what? Maybe we were wrong. Because all these 3 girls, nobody knew who they were at the time. Because it's not like they were performing at champs, like Veronica Campbell Brown, where everybody knew them and knew what they were doing over the years. These are 3 relatively unknown girls. I'm going to get into the other 2 later. And she proved herself. And not only that, but she proved it wasn't a fluke, because every single major game she went to after that, she came back with a medal or a strong performance.
So we have to give her credit, right? Let's talk some of her. I'm just going to list off some of her achievements, of her many achievements. In 2004, she was at Athens Olympics. She was on the 4x100 relay team that won gold. Right. Yeah. In 2008, she Beijing Olympics 100 meters. She won silver. Shared that with Karen Stewart,
the other girl that they didn't want at Beijing.
See that? But it's your Jamaicans you have to sometime. But anyway, 2005, she won the World Athletic Championship, which is the 4x100 meter relay. So she's by all means too. What I love about her is that she's a very good team player, because you can also tell this by her performances in the relays, right? I mean, a lot of times you need specialists in relays, not just what you call it again, not just the marquee names. Like even for us, like for us men, for the men team, that's when I said for us, right? You have Patch. What's his name again?
Yeah, Asafa Paul, Michael Freighter, Johan Blake, Nesta Carter. Right.
Nesta Carter and Freighter are 2 specialists. They might not have the fastest times in terms of individual race, but you have some people when you put them in those 4x100, Rashid, them know how to perform, and she's one of those sprinters, right? You have the 2006 Commonwealth Games, you have the 2015 Pan American Games, she won gold at the 100 meter. Good. So, is there anything else you want to put in terms of her accomplishment?
Just to quickly go back to what you said about the relay team and why she's important, because you're absolutely right. It's not just about blazing speed that makes a good relay athlete. You have to be able to have the chemistry with your teammates and know how to pass that baton off. And you have to know how to compose yourself, because especially it's not like the 400 where if the baton falls, you can pick it up and recover. If the baton falls in 100 meter relays, you're done. So it involves holding your nerve. And she is an athlete that's very cerebral, because even now, outside of track and field, she's the last I heard of her, she went off to study psychology. So you know that she's somebody who the mind matters a lot. So she's always held her nerve and she's always cool and calm under pressure. And that is why she's had all these achievements over the years because she knows how to perform at the biggest stage
Miss
and
Simpson.
consistently.
So listen. I mean, I love that, Miss Simpson. Big up yourself. You're number 7 on our list. No, number
Yeah.
6 on our list. I'll do the introduction. So, some people call her the Queen of Bronze. Some people call her, I mean, she was first Jamaica's first poster child in terms of, track athlete, born and bred. And she was so resilient. And she still is because she still competes to this day. It's Merlene Ottey. This woman, I mean, in many ways, she don't need any introduction. Don't it, Parchment?
Look, you see, growing up, if I thought of Jamaica, the country Jamaica, and I thought of Jamaica as a woman, I always pictured it as Merlene Ottey. I don't know why. But when I think of Jamaica, I think of Merlene Ottey. Because growing up, when you talk about sports, just a few names they hear. And Merlene Ottey was one of the few, one of the very first names they hear. Because at the time, at the level she was performing, no one else hit those levels. Because as I mentioned earlier, you have Grace Jackson, you have Juliet Cuthbert-Finn, and Merlene Ottey was in their time, but she was the most successful. As you mentioned, those medals she won, and every girl wanted to be Merlene Ottey at the time. If you go in any schoolyard and you see kids running around, ask them who they're pretending to be. Everybody's Merlene Ottey. Everybody knew her, and she was the first global superstar as a woman that Jamaica had. That her name transcended track and field for Jamaica. You see, like how these days when you talk about track and field, and the first name that comes up is Usain Bolt in a foreigner's mind. Back then, in the late 80s, early 90s, it was Merlene Ottey for Jamaica, and she was the one who we could really put up against Gwen Torrance, against Gail Devers, against Jackie Giant Cursa. Even a Flo Joe, the one name from Jamaica that you thought had a realistic chance of beating them was Merlene Ottey.
And you know what I love about Merlene? She wasn't afraid to compete. You have some athletes that pick and choose their races. Merlene ran everything.
That's true. And she loved the superstar status too because she liked to go around the world and draw audiences into the stadiums. And so she was at every meet and she loved Europe. I mean, she's living in Europe now, so she liked competing in Europe because it gave her a different atmosphere to compete in and a different the tracks are different over there, the conditions are different over there. I think she felt that suited her more than the warm weather conditions to compete.
Oh, I get you.
We have to salute her because without her, so many names on the list wouldn't be there. Everybody wanted to be her.
Listen, 80% of this list would not exist without Mother Merlene Ottey, right? So, what are some of her standout accomplishments for you?
All right, the first one that comes to mind for me is for me it was the silver at athletic games at the Olympic Games in Atlanta for the women's 200 meters, but also in the World Championship. She's won her gold medals in the World Championship. They did it in 1993 and in 1995, where she had won 200 meter gold. So that was her pet event, the 200 meters. And to this day, I think she still has the world indoor 200 meter. Well, the national indoor 200 meter record that hasn't been broken today. Merlene Ottey still holds that from back in the 90s.
Okay, go ahead.
No, so I'm saying the things that she's done there, it's incredible that he's still standing, even with modern athletes, with modern training techniques, modern medicine, modern coaching science, and all that. They still can't beat it.
All right.
They speak to longevity.
We're going to talk about another unsung hero on our list, right? Who deserves all the praises in terms of just her accomplishment and her resilience. At number 5, we have Karen Stewart, right? Now, Parchment, and leave the floor straight over to you. Tell me about Karen.
Similar to Sharon Simpson, Karen, she came to prominence in the 2008 summer, the Beijing Olympics. She was one of them from the golden generation that won. She won a silver medal at the Olympics, which was a little unheard of that she and Sharon Simpson shared the silver medal because they caught the exact same time, down to the millisecond, crossing the line behind Chilean Fraser Price to get the silver. And she picked out Lauren Williams from America for that silver medal. And she was one of them that people were iffy about going to Beijing because they didn't know a lot about her. But from there, she used it as a platform to and what I like about her is her consistent. From Beijing, people, a lot of people were saying, okay, she got the silver. Is this a fluke? Which come back and do it again. And in the World Championship the year later in Berlin, Germany, she won 100 meter silver and 4 by 100 meter bronze. So she was consistently performing at the highest level for Jamaica. Not just at the global meeting, but also individually at the Diamond League. Back then it was called the Golden League. She was also winning races on the circuit and showing that everybody that it's not a fluke. I am here to stay. I'm a big performer, and I had the time to always be in the mix for medals. You have to also consider the London Games where she had another silver 4 by 1. And a lot of people will look at this now and say, all right, but up here silver shall win. But consider who she was running against. She was running against another name on this list that we're going to get into a little later. Shelly and Fraser Price. Hard to beat her. But she
Yeah,
was always there, right there with her.
wasn't Felix also one of her contenders
Alison
too?
Felix. Absolutely, because as I said, Karen Stewart ran the 200 meters, and she was competing against two of the arguably greatest female sprinters of all time, in Shelley and Fraser Price in the 100 meters, and Alison Felix in the 200 meters. So to hang with them and pick up medals when they're winning the gold is no easy task.
True.
So her silver medals are very weighted against those names.
All right, now we have the next person on our list, right? And this is a relative youngster on our list, all right? Sharika Jackson, right? Now, Sharika is, she's forming into her own like a darling in the public's eye, a very strong and resilient runner. Parchment, you take the floor.
All right, so I know this is about the 100 meters and the 200 meters, but we have to talk about this when we talk about Sharika Jackson. She didn't start out as a short sprinter. She started out as a quarter miler, and she has accomplished a lot there too, because at the Rio Games, she won bronze in the 400 meters final. And this bronze, just like I mentioned with Karen Stewart, it was against some of the greatest in the event of all time. She competed against Shanae Miller-Weber there, and she competed against Alison Felix there. And for her to, in the Rio Games, to come back with a bronze, that's no easy feat. But you could look at that and say it's easy to get dismayed or demotivated, knowing that perhaps you're not gonna get a gold medal there. But she was training at the MVP track club with one of the greatest track coaches of all time, Stephen Francis, and he saw something special in her and realized that he could take her down to the starter sprint and squeeze even more out of her for that. And we first saw her in the short sprint around the time of the Tokyo Games, the 2020 Olympics, which was really run in 2021 because of the COVID pandemic. And she anchored Jamaica's 4x1 team to a gold medal there. And from there, she never looked back. We saw her a year later, because I remember, as I remember, 2021 was when the 2020 Olympics took place. So she went to Oregon the season later for the 200 meters. Before we get to that, at Tokyo, she also finished bronze in the 100 meters behind two other great sprinters in Jamaica's history, Elaine Thompson-Era for the silver and Shelly and Fraser Price for the silver and Elaine Thompson-Era for the gold. So that bronze medal by her is a big thing considering where she's coming from and how long she's been doing it before she came to the shorter sprint. And then she had her moment in the sun a year later at the Eugene Games when she won gold in the 200 meters at the World Championship at Oregon. Then she came back a year later at another World Championships because COVID really truncated the schedule. And we had back-to-back World Championships in 2022 and 2023. In 2023, she defended her title in Budapest, Hungary. So she won 200-meter gold in 2022 and 2023. And not only that, she's also one of the fastest sprinters of all time in the 100 meters and the 200 meters, lowering her personal best in the 100 meters to 10.65 seconds. Not many people can get below 10.7, and she's one of them. She's in the top 5 female sprinters in the 100 meters of all time, and she's one of the fastest ever in the 200 meters, clocking her personal best of 21.441 seconds for the 200 meters. And that is all-time speed. The only names that can compete with that are the late, great Flo Jo and Elaine Thompson-Era. So
let me ask
she is one of the fastest sprinters of all time, and she's still competing. And you could still say she's in her prime, at being in her early 30s.
Let me ask you though, at age 30, right?
Yeah.
Projection wise, how many more years do you think she can be performing at a
She
high
has
level?
maybe about 6 more years at the highest level. So you think about she'll be at I would expect her at the LA games and maybe a world championship after that. But
Okay.
what her problem has been this season has been injuries. So if she can get over those injuries, she can hit the heights she's been hitting for the last 2 years. And I'm very confident she can do that.
Okay.
And I
All
would
right.
expect something big from her in September at the World Championships in Tokyo.
All right. So let us go now. We're rounding it out to number three. Now, before I go down
Yeah,
to number three, right? Let me just tell the
yeah,
audience out there that these podcasts are about Jamaican culture, just every different thing about Jamaican culture, right? We have touched on multiple different topics. We touch on social topics like we did a podcast on the deportation of many Jamaicans. We go in depth in that, and you can go to my website kareemsquest.com where you can read a lot of these articles and just kind of get a feel for them for yourself. You can also watch these entire episodes on my Discover Jamaica page, dedicated page, and you can get some of our stories that we want to tell around the Jamaica. And Kareem's Quest also does travel. I do my own travel series and everything like that, and you can watch new episodes every week. All right, so back to our host. Well, after doing that housekeeping, let us go.
no, my very valid. And let me just say before you continue that I really love the things you do on your channel and showing the lesser seen things in Jamaica, going off the beaten path to show that Jamaica is not just beaches and jerk chicken and all that. There's a lot more to Jamaica than meets the eye.
Yeah, just like this is what we're going to. So number three on our list, right, is
Yeah,
Elaine Tom Sahara. Right now,
yeah.
you know a whole lot about Elaine, so go ahead and start us off.
Yeah, so Elaine wasn't a superstar as a high school athlete. No one really knew her. She went to Manchester High. She wasn't a standout at champ. So when she made her breakthrough in 2015, no one knew who she really was. I remember her first big time she clocked was at the All Comers meet in 2015. And it made people stand up and take notice that who is this girl? She's coming in at the time, Shelly and Fraser Price was Jamaica's premier athlete, and she was coming as a second athlete behind her as she was running comparable time. So when we saw her at the Beijing World Championship in 2015, she was key to run the 200 meters, and that is where she really announced herself to the world as a major global athlete. She was running against her main rival at the time was Daphne Skippers of the Netherlands, and Daphne was a heptathlete who came down to just running the 200 meters and performing, and she seemed unstoppable. So she won the gold there, and Elaine followed right behind her with 200-meter silver medal at the Beijing Games. And that's when the time she ran was pretty quick too, because Daphne was pretty unstoppable, but she ran a fast time to a Jamaica knew that it had another superstar in the making, especially when you consider that she's being trained by Stephen Francis. And what he's done in that one season, we knew that she had a very high ceiling and he could get her faster and faster and faster. So she went on from there at Beijing in 2015 and came to Rio Games, and she did the unthinkable. What was the unthinkable? Beating the girl that many people thought they couldn't beat, Chilean Fraser Price. She won gold at the Rio Games, and Chilean took the bronze that year. And
Confidently,
she was, yeah, sorry,
confidently too. She won
yeah,
it
she was,
confidently.
yeah, and she was a part of the 4x1 relay team that won silver at the Rio Games in Brazil. And then she moved on from there and created history in her own right at the Tokyo 2020 Games. She retained her 100-meter gold medal, and she also won the 200-meter gold medal there. She also, this, I didn't mention it, but she won the 200-meter gold in Rio. So when she came to the Tokyo Games, she retained both the 100 meters and the 200-meter gold. So it's a rare feat to see somebody win two gold medals in 100 and 200 and then come and do it in the next Olympics. We ain't thinking about that. Someone else did it for the US way back when, long time. I can't remember her name right now, but it wasn't a feat that you saw very often. And the only other athlete we saw that did something like that in the modern era was Usain Bolt. So right then and there, she put herself on a platform with the GOAT, Usain Bolt. She did something comparable to him. And she followed that up with she was a part of the relay team at the World Championship in 2015, where she won a 4 by 100 meter goal, and she took that was the same year she took her first silver medal. But the thing about Ilian, she helped to teach young athletes, the younger athletes coming up now, like the Clayton twins, Alana Reed, and those younger stars, that track and field is not just a sport. You can use it to build your brand as a celebrity and move on. Because a little known secret about track and field is that there's not a lot of money in it. But when
True.
you are an athlete that does what she does, you can use it to earn and make yourself a brand outside of it. Get those major endorsement deals to put yourself in commercials and build a brand and make sure that you are well taken care of when you decide to retire. And she's done
Because
that, and she's shown them that.
she was an ambassador for NCB Bank, right?
NCB, yes, and
She
Flow
had
as well.
yes, she had right. She had Flow and Flow. These are local for those who are watching internationally. These are major local businesses and companies in Jamaica. And she also
Yeah.
was a Nike athlete at one point.
Yes. So she, like the others at her time, was using her celebrity to earn another living outside of just on the track. And she's shown a lot of the athletes that this is the way to do it. You have to be smart with your money, and you have to look for the major endorsement deal. But one thing about her, why she's higher on this list, is because injuries has blighted her career. So I think I remember back in 2017 when she ran at the London World Championship, she had an Achilles injury that kept her out for a very long time. And I think if not for those injuries, she would probably be number one on this list, because I don't
Wow,
think she's managed to. And
wow,
the fact that she's achieved so much in spite of these injuries, she has to be number three on the list for me.
wow, wow. All right, cool. So now we're going to number 2 on the list, right? And this is a
Yeah,
name that's renowned throughout Jamaica because she really came up from the bottom and we saw her growth. And I think that's something that people also love, Rashid, with athletes and just with
yeah,
famous people on a whole. People like when they can see the growth from, at the youngest stage possible straight up to the professional stage. It's like it creates a connection with the people, right? And she
absolutely.
she being this person now being even a high school star, at track and field. I mean, it's no secret why she was, one of Jamaica's most beloved female sprinters. And at number 2, we have Veronica Campbell Brown. Go ahead, Rashid.
Yes. So as you rightly said, Jamaica grew fond of her from her early age. Unlike Shelley and Fraser Price, unlike Karen Stewart, unlike Sharon Simpson, unlike Elaine Thompson era, we knew her as a little girl. We saw her running for very technical at champ, and she made her first Olympic team all the way back in 2000 as a 16-year-old athlete. She was at the Olympics. So that speaks something, because many 16-year-old athletes, even today, no matter how we see them tearing up the track,
Yeah,
the coaches will say, you know what? Let us save you. Go to the youth games and get your understanding of what it means to be an athlete competing for Jamaica at that level. But she was so mature at that age. They put her in that team with adult professional athletes, and she held her own. I mean, the 2000 games in Sydney, the 2000 Olympics, she didn't come back with a medal, but she came back with invaluable experience that guided her for the rest of her career. And the very next Olympics, she was at Athens, and she won 200-meter gold and 100-meter bronze. And it was from the experience she had in the camp with a Merlin Otti back then, with a Michelle Freeman, with a Taylor Lawrence back that time. She learned from a very early age how to carry herself as a major international athlete. And she is, although she's number 2 on this list, and there's somebody who put above her. What for me about her is she is Jamaica's most medal athlete of all time. Men or women, she has accumulated the most medals for any athlete in Jamaica. And when you talk about, we're not just talking about senior medals, and we're talking about the junior level, high school level, coming all the way up. Nobody has more medals in her house. I guess she probably have a room, a whole warehouse in her house, just for medals.
and
And
listen,
she,
Parchment, I have to give you
yeah,
credit for pointing out the fact that because sometimes people don't understand how hard things like these are. I mean, just the nerves and you're flying on the plane and you're seeing these other big names. Can you imagine her going to an Olympic at age 16?
Yes.
And you're sitting, can you imagine you're sitting in a camp beside a decorated Merlin Atti? Good? I mean,
Absolutely.
it must have been nerve wracking, and for her to keep her composure and perform, that is phenomenal.
And that's what I like about her. She backs herself. She's very confident and she'll speak highly about herself. So even if she has nerve, you won't see it on her. And she's the type of person that believes that, all right, so I may not have the accolades of these people, but the fact that I'm sitting here in the room with them, it means I belong here. And she backs herself and it allows her to perform at her best. And you know what I like about Veronica? I've always said it, I've always joked about it with people in my inner circle, that she's Merlin's daughter. Because she always talk highly about Merlin. And when you see her running style, to me, something about her look like Merlin for me. Her how she attacked the track and her low center of gravity reminded me of Merlin, especially when you see her coming off the curve in 200. If you put her side by side with Merlin Atti, they look alike. And she always talked very highly of Merlin. She saw Merlin as her idol and it's true.
Wow, wow. So this is
Yeah.
this is somebody who has medaled at the 2004 Athens Olympics. She won both gold and bronze. In
Yeah.
2008 at the Beijing Olympics, she won gold in the 200 meters. In 2012 in London, she won 100-meter bronze. So she has been winning on every level, as you stated. And I mean, it's extraordinary because she really pushed her body to the brink, and
Yeah.
she tried to get as much out of it as possible. So she's more than worthy of being number 2 on our list.
Absolutely. And just like her mom, Merlin, she influenced a lot of the other artists that we mentioned earlier. So like a Karen Stewart, a Sharon Simpson, these were people that were in camps with her and relay teams with her and they would have learned from her. So a lot of the accomplishments they have, they would credit her for her invaluable experience that she shared with them in those track sessions, in those training drills with them.
Yes, and now it brings us to number 1 on our list. And if you're watching up to this point, please subscribe and
Yeah.
like. All right, I mean, it means a lot. We are a small station, we're a small channel, and we put a lot of research and work into these things that we do, because I don't just want to bring information to you just off the top of my head. I always want to put in the research and get the right people who can also express the pointers, just like Rashid, who is a 10-year plus journalist, sports journalist in Jamaica. I mean, he's passionate about it. So I always want to bring this information to you. And you can find more content on my website, kareemsquest.com. If you look on the screen, I encourage persons to go to my website so you can read, like even this article, you can read it in its fullness. Now, number 1 on our list should come as no surprise by now.
Yeah.
So it's Jamaica's darling, right? And it's Shelly Ann Fraser Price. Now, I mean, for me personally, one of the things that makes Shelly Ann number 1, it's her clear influence, right?
Yeah.
She just has this welcoming personality. She, she's somebody who, when you hear the word ambassador, her name
Yeah.
comes to mind. And I'll tell you what my Shelly Ann Fraser Price moment is actually, right? So my
Yeah.
moment, I don't remember what Olympic it was, when her toe was giving her a problem, right?
That was Rio 2016.
Rio 2016, when her toe was giving her a problem. Now, most runners would have just said, listen, at that point, she could have retired as number 1, right? Or should have been number
Yeah.
2 at least. Good. And because she would have had all the accomplishments by that point. And to see the champion in her, because she got her bronze, I believe. Good. And to
Yeah.
see the champion in her, like, that is something that people tell you that you can't train. Like, it's something that Bolt has, Michael Jordan has, Muhammad Ali has. You can't train it. You just have to have that fire in you that says, I deserve to be here. I deserve to be on that podium. And that, for me, Rashid, was the moment when I said, this woman is special. There's something different, because everybody is good when there isn't adversity. Like, I always
Yeah.
believe with all of us, not just athletes, but all of us, when you put somebody with adversity in that same pot and you see what that person does, that says a lot about that person. So that's my Shelly Ann Fraser Price moment. But go ahead and you tell us from the expert opinion about Shelly Ann Fraser Price.
If you ask anybody that knows me, like any athlete that talk about Shelly Ann Fraser Price is the one I talk about most glowingly. Just watching her as a professional, she's one of my favorite athletes of all time. And when we talk about the greatest athletes of all time in sport, and we talk about the greatest female athletes, a lot of people like to mention Serena Williams. For me, it's Shelly and Fraser Price. Everything about her, everything she does it with professionalism and she does it with class. Because I've had interactions with her, and I know that for many athletes, when they're competing and they just got off the track, they're tired. They just want to go through doping control. They just want to get back to the hotel and relax. And sometimes you see the grumpiness come out in them. No matter how tired she is, she always treats everybody with respect, and that is important to me. For me, I mean, her accomplishments speak for themselves. She's a five-time world champion in 100 meters. Nobody can match that. She's a multiple Olympic champion. She has the second fastest 100-meter time in Jamaica history, 10.63 seconds. And she did that in her mid 30s after coming back from pregnancy. And it's not easy running as a professional athlete and taking care of a family, having a child, stepping away from the sport, have a child, and come back and not just come back and compete, but come back and dominate and win gold medals. For me, one of her iconic moments was in Doha, Qatar in 2019 when she won the 100-meter there. And she went and celebrated with her son in her arm and draped the flag around her. And your colleague at the Gleaner, Johnston Taylor, managed to capture that moment perfectly. Was one of my favorite photographs in sports of all time. And I just don't have enough to say about the kind of person she is and the kind of athlete she is. And what I love about her, she does not give up. As you mentioned with that broken toe, she could have said, you know, I'm calling it a year for this. I'm calling it a season. Not going to Rio. But she still ran and still took a medal with a broken toe. That's no easy feat. And she's still competing now, and she's still competing at the highest level. And even though she's at 38 years old now, going on 39, you still have to consider her for one of the major medals at Tokyo this year. You can't rule her off a gold medal at 39 years old. And something we talk about with the greatest athletes of all time, we talk about Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, you talk about Lionel Messi, Pele, all these athletes that you consider the greatest of all time, they've managed to compete at the highest level in all sports, in their respective sports, at a late age in life. And she's doing the very same. You know why? Because she's smart enough to know how to manage her body and not treat herself like she did in her 20s or early 30s. She knows how to maintain herself throughout the season. The seasons are long. She has injuries. She knows how to pace herself and pick and choose the meat that she can get the most out of and run at her peak at the right time. So that she don't burn out herself before the major thing comes down. And apart from that, as I mentioned at the start of this episode, for me, what makes you a great athlete, not just not a great, is your ambassadorship. She's given so much to society outside of track and field. She's
True.
launched the Pocket Rocket Foundation where she gives scholarships to other young up and coming athletes in high schools. She's done so much charity work and she's become a household name in Jamaica. She's had so many different ad campaigns throughout her career. You think about Grace Tools, you think about Digital. And she's so well spoken and she's so well liked. And apart from her sprinting prowess, just people remember her for so many other things. When she gets on the camera and she speaks to you, she's always cracking jokes. No matter what happens, even if it wasn't her day on the track, she'll still have bubbly personality for you. And she's always saying the first thing out of her mouth, God is great. I know Jamaicans are very religious and they like to hear that reverence for God. She's always had that. And she's had so many accolades over the years, right? They just named that street in her honor a couple of weeks ago. She grew up at in Waterhouse. And that's another thing. She grew up in adversity. She grew up, she was self-made. She came out of one of
Her mother,
Jamaica's hardest communities. Yes.
yeah, her mother was a vendor and what, and there's just so many relatable stories about Shellyan. When you see
Yeah.
her, see, she gives so much hope to citizens of the country because her
Yeah.
story. I mean, she was not born with a silver spoon in her mouth. She
Yeah.
took her back to the literally to the street that her mother was a vendor on, right?
Yeah.
And so we're seeing that, what resilience must do. She went to Wilmot's Girls, was a
Yeah.
phenomenal, just person all throughout her life in terms of just applying herself. And that
Yeah.
for me, you mentioned something that I didn't even remember to recall because my second greatest Shellyan moment is when she actually got pregnant and then she came back from pregnancy and reclaimed her spot as number one. And, you know, a lot of people, once certain things hit them in terms of challenges, that's it, right? And
Yeah.
you saw what her mental toughness was like. I mean, when you read all of these books, these motivational books that highlight the greatest, that ever play any sport that you can
Yeah.
mention, they always state one thing that they have. They have a mental toughness that most people don't have. They have this thing about them that they refuse to give up. And she's one of those persons. And I love the fact that she loves the sport so much because Shellyan could have retired 3 years ago. Let's be
Yeah.
frank. And
Yeah.
she still find a way to give back to the sport, you know what I mean? For her to,
Yeah.
because she has many young athletes have said that she has given them a lot of guidance.
Yes, absolutely. And that guidance comes again from money management because as I keep stressing, there's not a lot of money in track and field. A lot of the athletes you see performing at the highest level, when they retire, they have to take normal everyday jobs like you and I because they didn't maximize their time on track to earn outside of it. And what she has done has built her brand in such a way that yes, there are the endorsement deals, but she's created businesses for herself so that she can stay earning in the same way she's done on the track. You think about the hair industry in Jamaica, the weaves and the braids and all of that. It's $1 billion industry, and she managed to tap into that market. And that is why you see when she goes to the Olympic Games, she carrying the flag. You see her with the many colors in her hair, and she uses that platform to market her business. And she's shown a lot of the younger girls coming behind her. Again, the Clayton twins. You think about Brianna Liston, Brianna Williams, Serena Cole, all those names, those younger athletes now. In a time where the economy is hard, they look to her and see this is how you do it. So that you run on the track, you use your money you earn on the track to set yourself up so you'll be all right off the track. And she is one of the few athletes that's done that wisely, comparable to Usain Bolt, because we know his scandals with his money, but he's still okay. He's still doing well for himself. And she's another athlete just like that. And she's it just goes to show what a smart, not just a smart athlete, but a smart human being and individual she is. How she manages her money and manages herself as a businesswoman too. I
So
just
Shelley,
can't stop speaking highly about her.
Shelley, if you're watching, right, and not just Shelley, but all the runners, all the sprinters on this list, right? We thank you
Yeah,
so much for the dedication and the commitment and the performance that you have shown over the years, and just how much you have given to your country. Just as
yeah,
somebody watches all of them run, I mean, it's phenomenal to see how they have represented their country. With so much dignity and grace as well. You know what I mean? Like there
yeah,
are a lot of times, I mean, there are so many, I mean, these are the 1%, let's face it.
yeah,
These are the
yeah,
1% people of life because they are so extraordinary. They have a talent that less than 1% of the earth will ever have. So kudos, ladies. And listen, if you want us to do another one on the male athletes, let us know in the comment section so we
yeah,
can countdown as well. You can look for Rashid Parchment's byline on almost any reputable media host, and you can see what his latest works are. I mean, now he's doing more editing work, but when you
yeah,
want some nice in-depth analysis, you can look out for him. Rashid, you're on Instagram?
yeah. Minimalist Sheed. So MINILISTCHID.
All right, cool. So minimalistic sheet. All right. So you can look out for his
Minimalist Sheed.
minimalist sheet. All right. So you can look out for
Yeah,
his content as well, right? Really good sports analysis, as you can see. I mean, the flow was his for this podcast because he's the one that is the expert. I'm just the host. As usual, you're always welcome to join the quest, and you can view more content on my website, kareemsquest.com.